And eventually over time, that person is going to realize, oh, they're serious. And when they realize you're serious, they're going to stop. Mm-hmm. So just keep sticking to your guns. Welcome to Goodbye Hangry. Learning to live a life that's happy, healthy, and full, one bite at a time. I am your host, Audra Budenseek. Hello, and welcome back to Goodbye Hangry. I have with me Daniela and Michael again. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Today we're going to be talking about how being assertive will help you lose weight. All right, and last week we talked about boundaries, and one way to set boundaries is to be assertive. That was one of the tips in setting boundaries, is assertiveness. So learning to be assertive is also important, really important for your mental health. And because of this, learning to be assertive and learning that skill is a form of self-care.
Okay.
I read an article on assertiveness on Psychology Today, and their description of what assertiveness is was really interesting to me, so I wanted to share that with you. Assertiveness is the middle path to communicating, whereas aggressiveness violates the boundaries of others, and passiveness violates your own boundaries. So assertiveness is like this happy medium where you're respecting your own boundaries and at the same time expecting. I was like, wait a second, that's not right. Okay, so assertiveness is the peaceful middle ground where you're respecting your own boundaries and also the boundaries of others.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, I liked it too. I thought that was a really interesting way of hearing it phrased that way, and it makes complete sense.
Speaking of assertiveness, where's your nose ring?
Oops, I scrubbed my face this morning. I didn't put it in. But anyway.
You literally forget to put it in like 1,000 times a week.
Yeah, it's confusing because it's like, it's always in my nose. So when I take it out, it's gone.
Where are your teeth?
She has dentures. So right now she forgot to put them in. You're not watching.
I don't have my braces in either.
If you're not watching on YouTube, Audra's just all gums right now.
You guys can do this straight. I'm gonna be assertive. I'm not gonna stand for this.
That's a little aggressive to me.
But under what category, assertive, aggressive, passive, do you feel like you fall under? And do you have any examples?
Oh. I need to think about this for a second. Do you have anything right off the top of your head?
I think this is kind of like long explanation. I think I used to be passive and let people walk all over me and not stand up for myself. So then once I finally got sick of it, kind of like going back to like boundaries last week, like once I got sick of it, then I became super aggressive. And I think that pushed people away. So now we're working on finding that middle path of assertiveness.
The perfect middle.
I feel like you said that was going to be a long time. And so I was like, okay, I can sit here and think for a second. And then you said something for 20 seconds.
Sorry. To me, that's long.
Well, I can go if you're still thinking.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I can relate to Daniela because I was super passive before. And I think part of that was too, like looking back in my childhood, I was taught to be very passive, like not to speak up for myself or stand up for myself, especially like if an adult or somebody said something to me, I was never, ever, ever allowed to speak up for myself in a way. Even if that person was being disrespectful or anything, it didn't matter. Like I had to keep my mouth shut. So in that way, learning to be quiet and just take things and just sit there, you carry that into adulthood. But then when you realize, oh wait, I have a voice, you start to like take that too far and then become aggressive. But for people who are people pleasers, being passive is very common because you put other people's boundaries as a priority over yours. And you think that you want to keep them happy and you want to respect their boundaries. And passiveness puts your boundaries as the cost for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see that as being the case for me too, because as a people pleaser, or recovering or learning, whatever, I would oftentimes put other people's boundaries and needs ahead of my own and neglect myself. And then once you do that over and over and over again, it builds inside of you, and it's like the last straw that breaks the camel's back. So you go from being non-confrontational to like exploding one day, and then you're like, oh my God, I don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
But that's the explosion comes from built up frustration over time that slowly builds on you, and then you just one day just let it all out. So but it's like finding that really happy medium where you're healthy, you feel respected, but you're also doing the same for others, and everybody, it's like a win-win.
Yeah.
So aggressiveness is like I lose, you win. Aggressiveness is I win, you lose, because I take my anger out on you. And passiveness is why is this
you win?
I win and you lose.
No.
Wait, no.
I was telling you to say you win. You win, I lose.
This is like directionally. I'm very directionally challenged.
It's really
true.
not
Which
that
way is-
hard.
which way is
It really
north?
isn't this difficult.
Which way is north, Audra?
That way.
Oh, good guess.
Good.
No, it's because if I know where the city is,
Where the building sits.
if I know where the city is and I know which way streets run, then I know which way is
Oh,
which.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I know the city's that way. So I know north is that way. City is south from where we are. Anyway, it's very confusing, and that is how I have to think about it. But aggressiveness, you win because you are taking your anger out on somebody, so they lose. They take the brunt of your anger. Passiveness, you lose because you disrespect your own boundaries, but the other person wins because you respect their boundaries. Assertiveness is everybody wins because everybody's boundaries are being respected and everybody leaves happy.
It's good.
Wow.
You
I
got through it.
Yeah. All right. Did you come up with that sufficient amount of time? For you to come up with the
Yeah,
story?
I think the problem is it's very situational. Like I'm like ultra competitive. So if I'm playing sports, I'm very aggressive. I could probably care less about your feelings. But on the other side of that, if it's something that I don't care about, I can be super passive. So I feel like that a lot of times, especially since we're talking about goal specific, like you have to be assertive in order to reach your goals. I think it does come down to what's important to you in that situation as well. Because there are situations where I think it could be beneficial to be passive if it literally does not affect you and you don't really have an opinion either way. Like there's no reason to, there's no reason to insert yourself into that. But if we're talking about, I have a goal, I'm trying to reach my goal, and you want me to, I don't know, let's say that I want to run 3 miles. And in order to achieve that goal, I need to run every day for a quarter a mile, half mile, whatever it is. I get to day 6 and you're like, hey, can you take 3 days off so we can do this instead? I would need to be assertive and say, well, we can do that, but I still have to get my run in order to move toward my goal. Instead of just being passive and saying, oh yeah, that's fine. Or being aggressive and being like, are you an idiot? No, I can't do that. So I think for me, it's very situational, but I think that if it's something that I care about, or I feel like that it's a boundary, I feel like that I'm decently good at being assertive without being aggressive. There are moments, but
I think you're pretty good at it, being assertive.
I mean, yeah, probably better now than I was 10 years ago.
Hey, that's how it works.
Yeah, you learn.
Yeah. But
I probably leaned, just to clarify, I probably leaned more toward aggressiveness before.
Slightly. Just a little bit.
So now I want to talk about like examples that I've heard from clients specific to weight loss, that I've heard from them, and examples to give you just an idea of what it looks like when it comes to losing weight.
Mm-hmm.
So a client their goal is to lose weight, but they have like their best friend might always be like, hey, Saturday, let's go eat at this place. And then you sit down and you're eating, or you go to order and you're talking about like, oh, what do you want to eat? And you're like, oh, I'm gonna go with this meal, which is a reasonable meal that'll bring you closer to your goal. Let's say like chicken, rice pilaf, or veggies or something. I don't know. And they're like, no, let's do this instead. Like we can have this. Let's have chicken and waffles or something like that.
Chicken and waffles.
Yeah. Or something that you know is not going to help you. A lot of times I see clients saying, giving into that. And you have to be assertive and be an advocate for yourself. And if your goal is really that important to you, you're going to have to learn to say no to those things, because there's never going to be a perfect world where you don't have to turn down something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where being assertive comes into play, and speaking up for yourself and stating your boundary. And it doesn't even have to be mean. So a lot of times I think when somebody is assertive, especially if you're a people pleaser, you think that you're going to hurt the other person or put them in a situation to where it's negative for them when you speak up for yourself. But that's not the case. You can do it in a respectful way and then just state it like, hey, that sounds really good to me, but this is what I have. This is what I'm going to choose.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
Well, I think too, it's important. Like, I think one thing that helps us be more assertive is recognizing that no one else cares about our goal as much as we do. And that's just reality. Like, we can't expect, our significant other or, friends or coworkers. We can't expect them to want us to reach our goal as bad as we want to reach our goal.
Yeah.
So if we're not willing to put ourselves out there in those situations, then you have to ask yourself, how badly do you really want to reach that goal?
Right. Because you cannot, no matter how much you want, you cannot control other people
Mm-hmm.
or what they do or say to you. You have to control yourself, and part of that is your own decisions, and you have to make the decisions that are best for you and continue to make that decision, because like you said, it's your goal, it's your responsibility, it's nobody else's responsibility. So learning to be assertive and stick up for yourself and be your own advocate in situations like that where there are temptations or somebody might be trying to derail you unintentionally most of the time. Just to say no to those things so you can keep moving towards your goal. Learning assertiveness is a huge skill that will help a ton with weight loss.
For sure.
Can you think of any more examples?
Like, of where you need to be assertive?
No, of like client struggles that you've come across.
I mean, the friends thing is always a big one.
Mm-hmm.
I think like another big one though is coworkers, because you, especially if you go to the office. I mean, now who knows if people go to the office or not, but if you go to the office to work and they constantly have a box of donuts, or they constantly have lunch coming in, or they constantly have whatever. That's another situation to where, oh, you can have one, or you can have, what I mean? Why does it matter? Like, why are you even trying to reach that goal? Like, it's just so stupid. Like, people will, again, project, like, they think that for them, they wouldn't be able to do it, so they don't think that you're going to be able to do it. And so they're now projecting that on you so that they can go eat 5 donuts and feel fine about it because you did it too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's basically just like confirmation bias type stuff.
Yeah. And I think people, and we see it a lot, and it's very common, and it's actually really sad, and it's one of the number one things that actually pushes people to revert back to their old ways, is because sometimes family and friends, you try to be assertive and set a boundary, and instead of them respecting it, all of a sudden now they're like talking about you and judging you.
Oh,
and
yeah.
you hear about the things that people who you thought were your friends now are like making fun of you behind your back, and you start to hear these stories, and it's very hard, but at the same time you can't control that. Like, your goal and your choices have to be bigger than everybody else and everything else, and you have to want it that much more in order to push through those difficult times, because not only is like changing your habits going to be difficult, but the effect that it has on your relationships might also be difficult too if you do not have a super strong support system.
Yeah, for sure.
So anything else?
No.
Okay. I'm going to move on to the tips for how to be assertive. So, tip number 1 is to be honest and direct. Assertiveness is very clear communication. It's okay to say no, and it's also okay to say no without any reasoning behind it. I think a lot of times when we say no to something, we feel like we need to follow it up with like a valid reason or a reason that the other person might think is worthy of saying no. And that's not true. So you don't have to give a reason. Sometimes no is sufficient. But also, if you say no, you can give a reason if you want, but just knowing that no is also enough.
And not apologizing. You don't need to apologize for saying no.
You don't have to apologize for your values, your choices, your boundaries, and respecting that part of yourself. You do not have to be apologetic for that. But you also want to be very clear with that person that you're speaking to whenever you're trying to be assertive, because if you're unclear or you start to like be like super like wordy, whatever, and you're just like feeling unsure in what you're saying, the person is going to not take it as seriously. So honest and direct is the best. That doesn't mean you have to be like rude or anything. Make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I just think of situations where like people have been married for 20 years and now they want to make a change. But only one of them wants to make a change. Like, that's a lot harder of a conversation than just being honest. I think that they have to intentionally sit down and have a conversation about it. I mean, obviously do these things and follow those steps, but it can't be one of those like passive, like, oh, hey, no thanks. Or like, I think there has to be more of a, like, wait, we're not going to go eat out 3 nights a week now.
Yeah. Starting out, you have to know what your boundaries are,
right,
and the choices that you need to make. You need to know that prior to being assertive, because if you don't have that blueprint in place, or you don't know what direction you're trying to move, you're not going to be clearly assertive to other people. And it really can just be a conversation too, just like sitting down with somebody and saying, hey, like, these are my goals, and I know you don't mean to do this, but you're making it really hard on me. And maybe if we could figure out a way to where both of us can actually get what we need out of this, that'll help. It doesn't have to be like a finger pointing, blame thing. It can just be like a very natural conversation to solve a problem.
Yeah, for sure.
Tip number 2 is be calm but firm, especially going from like finding yourself wanting to be aggressive, because a lot of times when somebody crosses your boundary, the first thing that happens is an emotional reaction. You feel it, you're angry, you're anxious, you're something. It's an emotional reaction. So separating your emotion from the conversation and trying to speak in logical terms instead of emotional terms with that person, because the instant that your even body language stiffens up or becomes aggressive, because your body language is nonverbal communication and that can come off aggressive too, is just to like relax and be calm and just open up to that person, but also being firm in the same way. So like the tone of your voice matters too, so you can have like a really like stern tone of voice and somebody's going to take what you're saying differently. Especially like even you can have a passive tone of voice where you're just like, people kind of do this. Like that's a passive tone of voice. So when you speak, you can just say, hey, this is this. It doesn't have to be, I'm so angry. But it also can't be, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think following the 5-second rule there is like, especially when you're responding to something, because it takes 5 seconds for your experience to go to the logical part of your brain. So if you feel yourself tensing up or getting angry or getting frustrated, like, just like give yourself 5 seconds and then it'll start to subside, and then you can decide how to respond from there.
Yeah. And I think for me in the beginning, speaking for myself, 5 seconds was not enough time.
Well, I think 5 real seconds is a lot longer in the moment, is a lot longer than you think.
Yeah, but I think for me too, I needed to completely step away from the situation to think clearly about it and work through it and talk myself out of it in my head, and then come back to the situation in a more logical manner. Like I needed to make sense of things before I came back to the conversation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Otherwise, if I didn't know the purpose of what I was doing, I just knew I was angry, but I hadn't pinpointed quite what it was. That's why I had to step away. I need to figure out what it is that actually made me upset and then talk to whoever it was about it. Because if you're just like, I'm angry, but you don't know what it is, it's kind of hard to problem solve in that way.
Mhm.
And getting to know yourself takes time. So sometimes you might need more than 5 seconds. You might need to step away to gather your thoughts and figure yourself out. Because getting to know yourself is a huge process. It's not going to be 5 seconds sometimes. But the more you get to know yourself, you start to understand, oh, I see this being a pattern. Whenever somebody does this, I get angry, and that is like the trigger for me. And before I responded in a positive manner this way, and it helped diffuse the situation. And you learn next time somebody does X and you get angry, you know to respond in the way that you've tried before that actually worked for you and them in the same way. So it's just really learning and getting to know yourself in that way.
Yeah.
Tip number 3 would be to keep going. So meaning, last episode we talked about how you teach others how to treat you, and being assertive is the perfect way to teach others how to treat you. It's a very good way to set boundaries and talk to people about things. And usually when you set a boundary, some people might test you or not take you seriously. So for instance, if your goal is to lose weight and you're with your husband and you've tried to lose weight a whole bunch of times before, but you weren't successful, but this time you really want to do it, and you go to set a boundary with your husband or be assertive with your husband, he might not take you seriously. He might just be like, oh, okay, she said this before, whatever, that kind of thing. They might not say it out loud to you, but that could be an internal thought that that person is having. So they might not take it seriously and then keep continuing to test you and push your boundary and try to get you to break. But that's because people around you are also learning too. They're learning your boundary. And in order to learn a boundary, you test it. It's just like children. Like when you have a toddler, they know I can push dad this far before he breaks, and I can push mom this far before she breaks. And it's completely different levels. But they learn that because that is what you have taught them with your actions as a parent. And that's the same thing with weight loss. You're going to teach everybody else around you, and they're learning your new habits and your new, I don't want to say customs, but the new things that you're trying to create for yourself. And that's also new to them. So the only way to let people know that you are being assertive and you have a boundary is to keep going. Don't break your boundary. You cannot go against your own word. When you do, you're letting that person know that it's not firm. It's not a firm boundary. And being assertive, like I said in tip number 2, is being firm. So same idea. And you don't have to, like I keep saying, you don't have to be mean about it. Just keep saying no. And eventually over time, that person is going to realize, oh, they're serious. And when they realize you're serious, they're going to stop. So just keep sticking to your guns.
Yeah, I think that's something else though that people probably struggle with, because if you constantly tell your friend no and eventually they stop asking, you're gonna fear losing that friendship or that, you know, that time out or that weekend out or whatever it is. So I just think too, you have to, again, you have to know what you want and why you want it, and then that helps this process a lot better.
Yeah.
Because if not, fear will keep you from actually setting those boundaries and being assertive.
Yeah, I think with that, with anyone who's trying to lose weight being scared of losing a friend because of it, you want to have friends around you that are supportive. But something that you can do if you want to hold on to that friendship, I think, is finding an alternative. So instead of going out and getting greasy food and just saying, no, I don't want to do that, say, no, but I found this other place that I really want to try that has healthier options for me. Can we go there instead? So you don't have to fear losing that friendship and losing that, time or that weekend out. But you can still say no and stay true to your goals.
Yeah, definitely. And tip number 4 would be to focus on what you can control, which is your own emotions and actions. So when you're being assertive at first, you cannot control the way somebody else is going to react. So if somebody pushes back, that's not your fault. That is their action. I think a lot of times we give too much control to other people instead of taking the control ourselves. And the only thing that you control is truly just you, your own emotions and your own actions, your own choices. So if somebody still tries to push a boundary or fight something that you're being assertive about, then the only thing you can control is you. And you can just keep saying no and keep making the right choices and keep going. Because I think, especially as a people pleaser, you get caught up in other people's emotions. But it's also really important. You matter. Your goals matter. So whether they do not matter to somebody around you, they actually do matter, because it doesn't matter what everybody else thinks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good.
Do you guys have anything else?
No,
Nope.
you said that one well.
Yep. Great job. Gold star.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So just to recap the tips, tip number 1 is be honest and direct. Tip number 2 is be calm but firm, paying attention to body language and tone. And tip number 3 is keep going. So when people try to push back, just hold your ground, continue to make the right choices for yourself. Tip number 4 is to focus on what you can control. Do you guys have anything else you want to add?
No, that's great.
Okay, so that's it for on how to be assertive to lose weight. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. You can reach us by joining our private Facebook group at the Fit Effect Movement. Just search for us, answer a couple of questions, and we'll approve you for the group. It's private, women only, lots of supportive women in there, as well as other health tips, mental, emotional, physical. It's all there, and we would love to help. So until next time, guys, bye.